I'm very pleased to see hostages returning home, coming back to be with their loved ones, and we're determined to continue that for as long as possible.
Do I worry about the state that the House of Representatives is in? I certainly do. I worry about the country.
If this city put the effort to fixing our country the same way that they put on expelling me, we'd be in a better place.
Hello, I'm Nancy Cordes in Washington. Welcome to America Decides. Israel says 12 more hostages were released by Hamas today, 10 Israelis and 2 Thai citizens, but no Americans again. That brings the total number of hostages released to 62 as a truce between the two sides held for a 5th straight day. U.S. officials say CIA Director Bill Burns returned to Qatar for a new round of talks aimed at freeing more hostages held in Gaza. Israel has vowed to resume the war with full force once the deal expires. CBS News intelligence and national security reporter Olivia Gazis joins us now. Hi, Olivia. So we woke up to the news that Bill Burns is now in Qatar. What is the goal of this trip?
Sure. Well, there's lots of moving parts here, Nancy, but broadening the pool of hostages eligible for release is one of the key components that the U.S. and Burns is pushing for here. Specifically, that means extending in future agreements the eligibility to men and soldiers, which make up some, if not most, of the American hostages that continue to be held by Hamas. Now, it's a tough sell. Hamas has not shown any indication that it's open to this kind of arrangement in previous talks. But one of the bargaining chips on the table, we're told, is Israel may boost the ratio of Palestinian prisoners that it's releasing in order to secure more hostages. So thus far, the ratio had been 3-to-1 or 150 for the 50 hostages that have come out to date. And we could see that ratio boosted in Hamas's favor in order to cajole the release of these more tightly held hostages, including men and soldiers.
That's really interesting because right now the ceasefire is supposed to lift on Thursday morning. Why send the CIA director to run point on this negotiation?
It's a great question. I mean, Bill Burns has been deployed by this administration as a sort of behind-the-scenes negotiating utility knife in some of the thorniest geopolitical snares that it's confronted thus far. So he dealt with the Taliban as the U.S. left Afghanistan. He was dispatched to warn Vladimir Putin ahead of the invasion of Ukraine. He worked on thawing frozen relations with Beijing in the aftermath of that spy balloon incident. So he's really been working behind the scenes. And now he's a veteran diplomat. He's got a wealth of contacts. He's got a lot of gravitas in the region. He's now got the added benefit as an intelligence chief of working behind the scenes in relative obscurity, which some of these really tough deals require in order to break through. He's also meeting with counterparts from Israel and Egypt, who similarly have a lot of influence and clout in their respective countries and regions. And so that's why there's hope that this group of stakeholders in, again, relative obscurity can make some real headway here.
And he's got deep ties in Israel as well.
That's right, yes. And dealing with the Mossad director that he knows very well is an added bonus here.
Well, we'll see if these talks bear fruit. Time is really of the essence here because Israel has warned, of course, that if there is no extension of this now 6-day humanitarian pause, they are ready to go right back to war on Thursday, with the U.S. making it very clear that they would like more time to get humanitarian aid into Gaza. Olivia Gazis, thank you so much for the update.
Thank you, Nancy.
Appreciate it. Rhode Island Democratic Senator Jack Reed joins us now. He's the chair of the Senate Armed Services Committee. Mr. Chairman, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Nancy, very much.
Absolutely. You know, a short time ago, the minority leader, Mitch McConnell, said there's going to be no funding bill for Ukraine and Israel at all unless it contains a credible border security component. Do you think funding for Israel can wait until the Senate strikes a border deal?
Well, I think it's imperative that we fund both Ukraine and Israel very quickly. And I think that's part of the impetus behind the discussions, very serious discussions on mutually acceptable language about the border. It should be pointed out that the president sent up in the supplemental a significant amount of money for border. That money could be used to decrease the waiting time for determination of status. But there are also other issues that my colleagues on the other side particularly want to advance, and we're talking with them. And we're committed to make sure we deliver the funds to Ukraine, absolutely critical, and to Israel. and also to solve or help at our border.
On America Decides last night, Senator Bernie Sanders, your colleague, had this to say about aid for Israel. Let's take a listen.
I think there are a number of us who do have a concern about a very large blank check for Israel if there are not conditions attached to it.
Senator Reid, do you agree with your colleague?
Well, I agree that we're reached a critical moment in this battle. They are beginning to shift their focus to the south of the Gaza Peninsula. And what we have to do is ensure, and we've communicated that, the president has, I assume, that they have to change their tactics, that they have to use much more sophisticated intelligence, more targeted weapon systems, smaller explosives, that their battle is with Hamas, not with the Palestinian people. And we also have to have humanitarian efforts go in. Whether that's best accomplished by the dialogue the president has and other national leaders or by conditions, at this point, I think the president has done remarkably well. I would not have supposed 2 weeks ago that we would have a ceasefire and we would be releasing hostages. And keeping that effort up, I think, is probably the most important thing at the moment.
It does seem like the White House has been getting more pointed with the Israelis about Gaza casualties. I know, Senator, that Senate Democrats met with IDF officials last night. Were you there? And if so, what was your message to them, particularly when it comes to casualties in Gaza?
Well, I was there, and I delivered a message that their operations in the first 6 weeks of the conflict have been not as focused as they should be. Dropping a 2,000-pound bomb on a refugee site is not the most, I think, efficient way to take out the Hamas target they were going for. Back in our efforts to liberate Mosul in Iraq, it took us 9 months, a long time, but we were very, very careful about trying to minimize civilian casualties. There were civilian casualties, but we took great efforts. We would not use a bomb that was even close to 500 pounds. So those things have to be considered, particularly as they shift south, because they're not demonstrating that they have, which I believe they do, a concern for the Palestinian people. And the ultimate way or path to victory is separating Hamas from the Palestinian people. If you do that, then Hamas will crumble.
Senator, while I have you here, has there been any progress in the effort to find a way around the blockade on military promotions imposed by Republican Alabama Senator Tommy Tuberville? I know as the chairman of the Armed Services Committee, this is an issue of great concern to you.
Well, it's an issue of great concern to me, but it's also a grotesque impediment and, frankly, punishment to military officers who served 30 years, to their families who served with them. They're in the midst of limbo. They don't know when they'll get their promotion and when they can assume their assignment. And as a result, you have many officers who are essentially doing two jobs. And military officers doing one job, it's a 24/7 operation. And the idea of doing two puts extraordinary stress. So this is unfair to the military. They've won their promotion based on merit, and to confuse it with a political issue and also make them tokens in a political battle is wrong. I think we're beginning to break through. When my Republican colleagues, and I commend them, went to the floor and asked for unanimous consents to get these officers promoted, which is the tradition, they demonstrated that they too understand the pain that these men and women are going through, and also their families. We have the resolution that was just adopted before Thanksgiving, which would suspend the rules without changing them, but suspend them essentially for the rest of this Congress so that we could continue to promote individuals as we have in the past. And I'm sensing more and more of my colleagues on the other side are uncomfortable with the Tuberville position.
We'll watch to see if that new legislative strategy bears fruit. Senator Jack Reed of Rhode Island, thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks, Nancy, very much. Take care.
Absolutely. A bipartisan group of senators spent the Thanksgiving holiday trying to work out a deal on border security. We'll talk to Republican Senator James Lankford about their efforts and why all of Congress is watching next. You're streaming America Decides. Welcome back to America Decides. A small bipartisan group of senators worked through the Thanksgiving holiday to try to figure out a deal on border security. Republicans are asking for border legislation to be tacked onto the White House's wider foreign aid bill that includes financial support for both Israel and Ukraine. Republican Senator James Lankford joins us now. He's one of the lawmakers trying to hammer out that deal. Senator, thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks. Good to see you.
Absolutely. Are you any closer to a border deal now than you were before the holidays?
We are working through bit by bit, trying to be able to make progress. As you know, the Biden administration, when they first released this national security package, they asked for funding for Ukraine, for Israel, for what's happening in the Pacific, and for additional funding for the southern border. We responded back to that and said, hey, more money is not going to actually solve the southern border. In fact, the administration has actually said that as well, saying more money is not going to solve it. It's got to be policy. So we're trying to bring some policies on this to be able to actually resolve the issues at our southern border, which is most certainly out of control.
So what are the key sticking points right now as you work with Democrats to try to come up with something? And have you definitively rejected the Democratic push to include legalizing Dreamers or some kind of pathway to citizenship as part of this bill?
So for 35 plus years, there's been this ongoing conversation about how do we do this comprehensive bill. And every time you start getting large on all the immigration issues, one more thing gets tacked on and the whole thing falls apart. I've been a big advocate to say, let's find the areas we can agree on. Let's move on those things and to be able to keep moving. There are a lot of areas that will not be addressed in this. But a key area right now that DHS has asked for a long time has been how do we actually have the authorities that we need to be able to actually manage our own border. Right now, they're screening about 500 people a day coming across our border and releasing about 7,000 into the country saying we'll get to you later. That line for the later is now into the 4 to 8 years now to actually get to later if we ever get to them at all. And some of the people that are released into the country, they literally have no plan, no idea when they're going to get to. So we've got to be able to resolve this. So if you've got 7,000 plus people a day, day after day, that we don't know who they are, we don't know their background, we don't know anything about them that are being released in the country. Chicago, Los Angeles, New York City, cities all over the country are saying we've got thousands of people here with no jobs, no plans, no anything else. We can't manage all of this. And so whether you're red state or blue state, people are asking around the country, how do we get to an orderly process that we can actually screen people at the border? If they should qualify for asylum, they come into our country to be able to do that. And if we don't, we do the same thing that we've done for decades, and that's turn them around. So we just got to find what authorities are needed to be able to do that and come to that agreement.
So how long do you think realistically it will take you to reach that agreement? Because the White House has been arguing funding for Ukraine is running out. They need to provide funding for Israel as well. And I know that these are things that you care about. So how long are you willing to work on this side deal on border security before you say we can't wait any longer, we're jeopardizing aid to key allies?
We have got to be able to resolve all these things at once. As I go back to the White House had 4 pillars in the very first presentation of this, saying these are the 4 essential things that need to be done. We've got to be able to finish up what is that 4th element of this, the border security package, to be able to get to it. This has been hard negotiations, as it has been. That's why nothing's been done for more than 3 decades in this area, and it continues to get worse and worse and worse every year. So we're at a breaking point now where whether you're Democrat or Republican around the country, people are saying we just want an orderly legal process. We want legal immigration and we want to deter illegal immigration. That shouldn't be a partisan issue. And so our focus has been how do we actually get to that orderly process where we encourage legal and discourage illegal. So we know we have days to get this resolved, and we're focused on it just with that effort to know we've got final days to resolve this.
You think you can resolve it by mid-December?
We have to, so we will. Congress works best on a deadline, and we most certainly have a deadline on this.
No question. The Democratic leader, Chuck Schumer, the leader of the Senate, called Republican proposals to resume construction of the border wall. He called it a quote, non-starter. What border measures do you think could garner support from Democrats?
So it's interesting. Border security and national security shouldn't be a Republican-Democrat thing. And for the Democratic leader to talk about if we're going to increase our border security, that's a Republican ask, is surprising to me in some ways on this, because most Americans that I talk to are very grateful to be able to have legal immigration happening in the country. They just don't want unchecked illegal immigration, and that's what we have. We had just in the past few days more than 7,000 people a day that were released in the country. To give you a perspective on this, if you go back to 2010, not that long ago, in 2010 we had 21,000 people a year that asked for asylum on our southern border. Now we have that every 3 days. So this is significantly different than things that we have actually experienced in the past. And so all we're trying to do is say, let's have an orderly legal process here where we have lawful pathways to be able to come in the country, and we discourage illegal pathways.
No question that the numbers have exploded. So what's your sense of where the compromise is here, and how do you discourage asylum seekers? How do you essentially decide before they get here to the United States who has a legitimate claim to asylum and who doesn't?
Well, the asylum law is the asylum law. It's been that way for a long time. It just right now, you don't actually get to an asylum hearing for years. So you're released in the country. The vast majority of individuals never come to complete that whole hearing process, and they disappear into the country. And it continues to promote this come one, come all across the world on it. So we've seen that challenge. So at this point, I can't talk through exactly how we're going to get there. We've got some things that are resolved and some things that are unresolved. That's the nature of a negotiation. But we all understand the importance of it. And my focus is, this is the moment that we've got to be able to resolve border security. The entire country is asking for it, regardless of political party. Let's actually resolve this. And so we're pushing to actually say, let's keep working until we get it done.
If you can't get it done, are you willing to vote to support aid to Israel and to Ukraine without it?
Our caucus has been very clear as recently as today that we've met and said we're not going to move to be able to help other countries' national security and not support the security of the United States of America. We have not only responsibility in other countries, we have responsibility right here. And right now, American national security is being ignored, and that's about to come to an end.
Understood. Senator James Lankford, Oklahoma, will be watching. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
The Koch network is endorsing a candidate not named Donald Trump. Next, who they think has what it takes. You're streaming America Decides. Welcome back to America Decides. The political network founded by the billionaire Koch family has endorsed Nikki Haley. The group says, quote, in sharp contrast to recent elections that were dominated by the negative baggage of Donald Trump and in which good candidates lost races that should have been won, Nikki Haley at the top of the ticket would boost candidates up and down the ballot. CBS News senior White House and political correspondent Ed O'Keefe joins us now. Ed, this is big. The massive Koch machine rejecting Donald Trump in a very public way, pouring its money into efforts to defeat him. What does that tell us, and what does it mean for Nikki Haley's prospects?
Well, it's a big boost for her, Nancy. Air cover, almost literally, as Americans for Prosperity now plans to spend advertising money in the early primary states and several of the Super Tuesday states, because they've discovered, as I think many would realize, is that she's not as well known among the Republican contenders and certainly not nationwide. These advertisements designed to boost her name recognition and try to convince Republicans to vote for her instead of former President Trump or any of the other contenders. But for somebody who has seen her polling increase and her gap with the former president, while still far and wide, narrow somewhat, it's the kind of momentum she needs to make the argument to voters, especially in Iowa, New Hampshire, and South Carolina initially, that she can unite the GOP.
A boost to her, no question, a blow to Ron DeSantis, who's trying to lay claim to that runner-up spot. Okay, and you're in Denver, where the president is hosting a fundraiser. But meantime, back here in D.C., lawyers for the president's son, Hunter Biden, told Congress today their client is willing to testify publicly in front of the House Oversight Committee. This is the committee that's demanding that this testimony take place behind closed doors. Explain why the Republicans who run that committee wouldn't want him to testify out in the open, and is the Biden team saying anything about it?
Well, they offered to testify publicly in open hearing and arguing that the ongoing investigation is baseless and the American people deserve to see it. But the chairman of that committee, Jim Comer of Kentucky, today saying, no, we've subpoenaed him for closed-door witness testimony first then we're happy to have him testify publicly. Hunter Biden's attorney saying, no, we're only going to want to do this in public because it's been a waste of time. It's baseless. Abby Lowell, his attorney, writing to the committee that they're essentially like Captain Ahab looking for the infamous white whale. It doesn't exist. This has been a waste of time, and the American public deserves to see it. We'll see if Hunter Biden ever ends up testifying to Congress at all. He, of course, remains the subject of an ongoing federal legal investigation. But his approach here, trying to expose Republicans in what he believes to be a baseless investigation, is a far more aggressive tack than the White House and his father has been taking. The White House, of course, says almost nothing about the first son's legal issues, and the president merely expresses public support and love for his son. Some Democrats I spoke to today say, look, we appreciate that he's trying to expose Republicans and get this issue off the table ahead of next year's elections, but there is the potential, given some recent polling that shows many Americans believe that the president did something wrong potentially here in dealing with his son's business deals, that it could affect his reelection prospects and maybe even that of other Democrats running up and down the ballot if voters don't want to be supporting what right now at least is an unpopular president who, as you said, is here tonight in Colorado raising money ahead of some official events tomorrow.
Public testimony is high risk, high reward. We'll see which one. Ed O'Keefe in Colorado tonight. Thanks so much. A significant number of lawmakers are planning on walking away from their careers on Capitol Hill. Nearly 40 members of Congress say they're leaving at the end of this term. Some are expressing frustration with the sharp divisions on Capitol Hill and the sense of chaos there. CBS News congressional correspondent Scott MacFarlane joins us now to talk about this. So, Scott, what are lawmakers telling you about why they're leaving?
And Nancy, this is a wave. Nearly 40 people in a short period of time saying they're retiring, but there's increased speculation, if not concern, that it's a growing wave and could metastasize as some members of Congress who've been here a while see their political buddies leave and head for the exits too. Perhaps the most striking of the group is Anna Eshoo, the Democrat from the Bay Area of California, been here since the early 90s, has passed more than 60 bills, close friends with former Speaker Nancy Pelosi. I asked her if she was leaving because of the toxicity and the stalemates of this Congress. Does any of the toxicity and polarization of this Congress make your decision easier or part of the motivation?
Not really. No, that's not my reason for retiring. I think it's time. It's just the best way for me to explain it. Do I worry about the state that the House of Representatives is in? I certainly do. I worry about the country. And, so many constituents have asked me, how can you stand it? It's so polarized. It's so toxic. And, my response every time has been the same. That is it tough? Yes. But America is worth it.
But Nancy, there are two other of these retirees, Ken Buck, the Republican from Colorado, and Earl Blumenauer, the Democrat from Oregon, who tell me it is the drama of this Congress, the viciousness, the standoffs that are leading them to leave the place. They say they just can't get the work done they want to get done. That's the factor that threatens to grow the number over the next few weeks as the next deadline hits, Nancy, in mid-January.
It's a sad day when you hear lawmakers saying they think that they can get more done off of Capitol Hill than on it. Scott MacFarlane, thanks so much for bringing us that interview. Former presidents and first ladies gathered in Atlanta to honor the life of Rosalynn Carter at her tribute service. She designed the program herself before she passed away. Her son Chip spoke about the influence his mother had on him and their family.
My mother was the glue that held our family together through the ups and downs and thicks and thins of our family's politics. As individuals, she believed in us and took care of us.
Beautiful service. Her husband, former President Jimmy Carter, who is in hospice care, was there in person, but was physically unable to deliver any remarks. Well, that does it for today. You're streaming CBS News. Thanks for watching.